Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at Michaela Mayer's potential opponent options moving forward, as Michaela Mayer eyes two options for mid-year return, including a Natasha Jonas rematch, which we talked about in my previous video. Michaela envisioned her 2024 campaign to include 3 fights and with a major title in her possession. Those goals remain in play, even if the belt part comes with a 1-fight delay. The ring has learned that Mayer is exploring 2 separate lucrative options for her next outing. One is a rematch with 2-division and current reigning IBF welterweight champion Natasha Jonas. The two met in a memorable January 20th clash, won by Jonas via split decision in her Liverpool hometown. A targeted second act would also take place in the UK, though likely in London. Boxer, Jonas's promoter, is currently working on plans for a potential June 15th show. The Sky Sports event would likely include this fight if a deal can be reached on time, and the clock is ticking. The inclusion of Mayer would also push the show to ESPN Plus in the United States, as was the case in January, the June 15th show. I saw a blurb about them doing the Chris Billum-Smith versus Richard Riakporhe fight that same day. Can only deduce that Jonas versus Mayer 2 would be on the undercard of Billum-Smith versus Riakporhe 2. Richard and Chris, they'd be headlining.
It's not a bad card if they can put it together.
Billum-Smith versus Riakporhe 2, Jonas versus Mayer 2, as should be the case. The marketplace ultimately dictated that the two need to run it back. Mayer, number 4 at 147 and number 10 pound for pound on Ring Magazine's pound for pound list, remains Jonas's most lucrative option. However, Jonas is not the only option for the 2016 U.S. Olympian and former unified 130-pound champion. The Ring has confirmed that there are talks ongoing between Mayer's team and another top-level champion, top-level fighter. WBO welterweight titleist Sandy Ryan, who's number 2 at 147, is believed to be that option. Representatives for Mayer did not immediately return messages left seeking clarification. However, the Ring has learned that the second option would also take place in the UK and around the same time frame. Ryan is prime for a quick return after her March 23rd 4th-round stoppage of 2-division champion Terry Harper in Sheffield. Mayer previously stated that a Jonas rematch was her priority, but the backup plan was the Ryan versus Harper winner. Either option would see Mayer hit the road to challenge for a portion of the welterweight crown. Mayer previously held the IBF and WBO titles at super featherweight. The 33-year-old California native, who now lives and trains in Las Vegas, won the WBO strap in an October 2020 shutout of unbeaten Eva Brotnicka. 2 fights later, she outlasted France's own Maiva Hamadouche to win the IBF title.
Both of those fights took place in Vegas.
Here in the United States, it's been a long time since Michaela Mayer fought on U.S. soil. She would have to concede home field advantage and go in as the away fighter in either scenario, whether it's for a Jonas rematch or a Sandy Ryan fight.
Well, that's what she's been doing for the last 2 years.
So which option provides Michaela Mayer the greatest chance for victory? A Jonas rematch or a Sandy Ryan fight? Well, it's not an easy decision to make. It's not an easy choice, but I think she stands a better chance of beating Natasha in a rematch than beating Sandy.
And I know she got screwed on the cards the first time.
The first time they fought, it was in Natasha's hometown. It was in Liverpool. This time, the fight would take place in London.
Well, it's not exactly neutral territory.
Well, it's not, but fighting Natasha Jonas in Liverpool is tantamount to fighting Natasha Jonas in her living room.
London is a little bit more neutral.
For me, Michaela Mayer already beat Natasha Jonas. She should have been given the decision in the first fight, and she wasn't. Though because she fought her before, she does have those experiences to draw from ahead of what could be a second fight with an older, smaller fighter.
Whereas Sandy Ryan is bigger and younger.
With Natasha, she'd be facing a naturally smaller fighter like herself that moved up in weight, because Natasha's not a true welterweight, neither is Michaela Mayer, whereas Sandy Ryan,
she is
naturally bigger than both. Don't forget that both Michaela and Natasha, they used to campaign all the way down there at 130 pounds. They're just naturally smaller fighters who moved up in weight. Evaluating these two options, even though she got jobbed on the cards in their initial meeting, I still view the Natasha-Jonas fight as the relatively easier fight to win than the Sandy Ryan fight.
I like either fight. I ain't got a preference.
That the Jonas fight is still the relatively easier fight to win, and I don't know how much Michaela wants to have to cross over to DAZN, wants to have to cross over to Matchroom, because that's what she would have to do to fight Sandy Ryan.
She want to do that?
So what Sandy did to Terry Harper, a naturally smaller fighter who moved up in weight like Michaela, like Natasha. You saw what Sandy did to her. What would she do to Michaela?
Things to think about while we wait for Michaela Mayer to make a decision.
In other news, veteran trainer Robert Garcia is interested in training Errol Spence Jr. after the fighter's reported split with longtime trainer Derek James. All things come to an end. Trainer Robert Garcia has confirmed his interest in training former unified welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. following the fighter's split with Derek James. James last week confirmed that he is no longer working with Spence, who suffered a devastating stoppage defeat to Terrence Crawford last July in an attempt to become the undisputed welterweight champion. Crawford knocked down Spence 3 times before bringing the night to a close in the 9th round in a career best performance. James recently refused to deny a rift with Spence and admitted they had not spoken to one another in weeks.
Talked about that in a previous video, the potentiality that Spence's partnership with Derek has come to an end, but he is on the comeback trail.
A story that's been making the rounds and a lot of people are talking about it. The Boxing Voice's own Nestor Gibbs had his own theory as to what may have led to the split.
Yeah. That was a blessing in disguise, because I'm told that he got to see how AJ's contract was. Like, AJ, it's a whole different setup. You know, AJ makes his trainers wear certain outfits because of sponsors, and AJ gives you a contract.
Damn.
So, you know, he woke up and smelt the coffee with AJ and with Ryan, and he like, yo, something's up.
It's important to note that Derek James and Anthony Joshua are no longer working together, but what young Nestor is suggesting is that in the brief time they did work together, Derek got a taste of what it's like to work with a real professional and a real cash cow, not a manufactured one like Errol Spence Jr., and
Maybe that's what caused the rift.
the rumor is that the split between Derek and Errol is money related. So maybe when Derek got a whiff of what it's like to work with someone with some real money and some real juice, he saw that situation with Errol just didn't make sense.
Maybe.
Since then, veteran trainer Robert Garcia, in a recent interview with 210 Boxing, was asked if he would be interested in training Spence. Garcia said he believed he could utilize methods similar to those he used in training Marcos Maidana as a blueprint for Spence's future success. If he reached out to me, would definitely consider speaking and talking to him, Garcia said of Spence. I would love to, because those are challenges for me too. Look at Marcos Maidana. He had the best paydays of his life when he came to me. Sometimes fighters need something like that. Maybe Spence needs something like that. Garcia also complimented Spence on his fighting style and believes he has plenty left to offer, saying he wouldn't need more than fine-tuning in terms of adjustments. Spence is best described as a boxer puncher.
He is?
He already has a great style, Garcia said. He was pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world. It's just little touches, honestly. It would be a little challenge for me too. I would love to talk to him about putting something together. However, Garcia concluded that he would first need to speak to his team about adding Spence. I have a team too, but I'll talk to my team and everything, Garcia said. Why not? There are still so many things that he can still do. If he were to start working with Robert Garcia, that would kind of nix the potentiality of a Virgil Ortiz fight, because Robert trains him too.
He's been training him off and on, but he's training him now.
This is all theoretical, but if Spence were to start working with Robert, that could nix that fight.
Not that it was on the verge of happening anyway.
Spence is best described as a boxer puncher, and I know that if you come in at the right time and you look at him mid-range to inside and see how many combinations he's putting together, how many punches he's throwing, he might have the look of a pressure guy. His propensity to throw punches and the proximity at which he likes to work.
But he's not a pressure guy. He's not a pressure fighter.
He's a boxer puncher.
What, a boxer puncher like Gervonta Davis? A boxer puncher like Teofimo? He's a lot more busy and around than they are. So how is he a boxer puncher?
It's because not all boxer punchers are created equal, and the year mark of the boxer puncher isn't any one thing. It's actually several things, as they borrow characteristics from both the pure boxer and the pressure fighter. It really is all in the name. Boxer puncher. They box a bit, they punch a bit.
Pure boxing is all about defense.
That's why it's a base style that's very easy to identify and interpret. The pure boxer leans in the direction of defense. The pressure fighter leans in the direction of offense.
The boxer puncher is smack dab in the middle. They do a bit of both.
Well, are you sure that applies to Errol Spence Jr.? Because he's a more offensively minded fighter than anything.
Well, not all boxer punchers are the same. Not all boxer punchers are created equal.
Some boxer punchers lean more towards the direction of the boxing than the punching, even though they can punch. While some boxer punchers lean more towards the punching than the boxing. That would be Errol Spence Jr. It's almost bordering on being a pressure fighter. Almost, though not quite.
What sets apart the boxer-puncher based style from the other two, which are much easier to identify, is the boxer-puncher based style operates as a bridge that allows the fighter to do a bit of both. Bit of boxing, bit of punching.
Boxer punchers, just in a very general sense, they can adjust. They can tweak things, change things, as they borrow properties from both from the pure boxer and the pressure fighter. So a new corner could do Errol Spence Jr. some good, give him a fresh start on the heels of his first professional loss, but I don't necessarily think strategy.
It's not his biggest problem.
I mean, he was never the boxer that Terrence Crawford is. He's even more malleable, even more adaptable, more cerebral, and more ferocious. So there are things that Errol can improve upon, namely defense.
Said that for 5 years.
So strategy, at least to me, doesn't seem to be his biggest problem. What I think his biggest problem is that we don't know how durable he is anymore. That if he wasn't already damaged goods going into the Crawford fight, after that, he might be. The beating that he took was a systematic beating that lasted 9 rounds with 3 knockdowns. That's the kind of beating that can leave a fighter changed.
And you can change your corner, swap out Derek James for somebody else, but that's not going to undo all the damage that Terrence Crawford did.
As well as campaigning at a new weight, while Errol Spence Jr. had generous physical dimensions for a 147-pounder, at 154, the guys are going to be noticeably bigger, noticeably stronger.
A 147-pounder who started out at 135 almost beat you half to death. What are the guys at 154 gonna do to you?
The solid ones, the solid fighters. If Errol Spence Jr. fights them, does he have the durability and wherewithal? It doesn't all boil down to just hiring a new trainer.
Trainer can't fight the fights for you.
So, Robert Garcia says that he's interested in working with Errol Spence Jr., but I don't know that Errol is interested in working with him. Maybe he migrates from Derek over to Ronnie Shields. He trains a lot of PBC fighters. Maybe he works with Ronnie. Maybe he works with Ismael Salas, El Profesor.
He trains Brian Mendoza.
He's worked with anyone from Kazuto Ioka to Joe Joyce. Maybe Errol works with him. Maybe Errol works with Kevin Cunningham, who trains Erickson Lubricant.
It's in the air.
We don't know who Errol's going to be working with moving forward, but he's not with Derek anymore. He's in the market for a new trainer, and there are a lot of options. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, a few words from the former WBO Cruiserweight champion turned Bridgerweight contender, Lawrence Okolie, ahead of what is his bid to become a 2-division champion opposite the ring reigning Bridgerweight champion Lukas Rozenski in Poland. Lawrence said, "You want someone in your corner that wants to win as much as you do, and he cares about it, so I think it's the perfect match for this," in reference to his pairing with Joe Gallagher, his new corner, his new trainer.
Tesco Joe.
Lawrence Okolie used to be trained by Shane McGuigan, then he left Shane for Sugar Hill Stewart. Now, it seems he's left Sugar Hill Stewart and he's working with Joe Gallagher. Whether you think this is a step up or a step down, whatever you think, it all means the same thing. He's going to be experimenting with a new corner the night of, and he hasn't fought in over a year's time. Neither has Lukas Rozenski, but Lukas' situation is more stable than Lawrence's.
How so?
Lukas ain't the one coming off a loss, and Lukas ain't the one breaking in a new trainer. Lukas has home field advantage. He's the defending champion.
That's how.
Even though the night of the fight, both guys will have been out of action roughly the same amount of time, there's more working for Lukas in this situation in terms of intangibles than there is for Lawrence. Lawrence, who is a noticeably long and limber fighter, a much taller and longer guy than Lukas Rozensky.
He's got a height advantage, a reach advantage.
So is it really an advantage if you can't keep the guy out, if you can't keep him at arm's length? This past weekend, we saw Steve Robinson take on Alen Babic. There was a comparable discrepancy in size when it came to that fight as we see in this one between Lawrence and Lucas.
Yeah.
And in that fight,
Yeah.
Steve Robinson couldn't keep Alen Babic out.
Even though he was the taller guy and the longer guy, he couldn't keep Alen Babic at arm's length. Thus, Alen crowded him, worked him, mid-range to inside. Could that happen to Lawrence?
To Lawrence's credit, he's a more well-schooled boxer. I say he's a more educated boxer than a Steven Robinson he is. But I could also say that Lukas Rozensky is a more dangerous mauler, a more dangerous brawler than Alen Babic.
How's that?
He knocked Alen Babic out. He knocked him out in just one round, effectively proving that he's better, somewhat better, with that same base style.
That's how.
Now, Lawrence Okolie has to deal with him. And I'm telling you, if Lawrence can't keep him out, if he can't keep him at the end of the jab and set him up for a big right, he could be in a world of hurt, in a world of trouble, because mid-range to inside, Lukas is going to have the advantage. The shorter guy with the shorter arms, whose punches don't have to travel as far at that proximity, they have the edge within close quarters.
Not the taller, longer fighter with the longer arms who needs more room to work. He can't let Lukas get close to him.
If Lawrence had home field advantage, he could always resort to smothering Lukas, smothering him by tying him up. That if Lukas sails past the jab and he gets in too close for comfort, Lawrence can tie him up and smother his work that way, if he had home field advantage. But he doesn't. The constant wrestling and clinching tactics, they won't go over well in Poland.
You do that shit over there, they might deduct a point. Several points.
That's what happened in Lawrence's last fight. He was deducted 2 points in both the 5th and 7th rounds of the Chris Billum-Smith fight. It costed him. There were point deductions in his last fight for holding. There could be point deductions in this one.
It's not looking good, man.
Just being honest. You're breaking in a new trainer, you're experimenting with new techniques and perhaps a new style as the away fighter in hostile territory.
Against the dangerous puncher. To some degree, Lawrence can punch too, but he's got to catch this guy.
And when the discrepancy in size is so dramatic, it can be awkward, difficult for the taller, longer fighter to land clean on what is a much smaller target.
Barreling forward.
You have to be sharp as it takes timing and reflexes to catch the guy coming in. And what are Lawrence's reflexes and what's his timing going to be like a year out since he last saw action?
It's not looking good, man.
Just being honest, he's got an uphill battle ahead of him in Poland.